Here we go again. James Cameron returns to bring us his latest high frame rate 3D visual extravaganza. A dizzying feat of modern tech costing $400 million US. But is it just copy and paste spectacle? Does any of its 3 hours and 17 minutes actually mean anything? And does it cap off this storyline feeling like Return of the Jedi? Or does it end up rehashing ideas in the vein of Rise of Skywalker? First off, I just want to appreciate what a monumental day it is for cinema when another one of these films comes out. And this film comes with two pretty enticing side dishes. All screenings of Fire and Ash will include 4 new teaser trailers for Avengers Doomsday. A new one will come out each week over the next 4 weeks. And if you see Fire and Ash in IMAX, you will also get to see the 6-minute prologue of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. That is an incredible deal. But what about the rest of your 3-hour cinema experience? Well, it might be a conflicting one. My personal experience with the Avatar films has been a bit of a roller coaster. I remember back in 2009 on my birthday braving a snowstorm to go and see this in 3D. This huge talked about spectacle that was pushing the boundaries of filmmaking. Not understanding what any of it meant, but very excited nonetheless. And to be honest, even at the age I was back then, I was kind of underwhelmed. So much so that I didn't go and watch Avatar again for about 10 years. And revisiting it again earlier this year, some of its themes and ideas have grown on me quite a bit. The feeling of discovery, along with some great world building, is something I think it deserves credit for. But it certainly sits in the bottom echelon of Cameron's catalogue for me. But then I think Terminator 2 is perhaps the best action film ever made, so it's a high bar. However, something magical happened when I saw Way of Water in 3D IMAX for the first time only a month or so ago. I was stunned. This film about blue people and their magical tree suddenly blossomed into one of the best cinema experiences I've ever had. I couldn't quite believe the level of immersion this film created, the fluidity achieved through 48 frames per second, and this story that initially felt like simple allegory suddenly meant something to me. The water sequences were not just absolutely breathtaking, but I felt the connection the characters and the creatures had. I felt the meaning, it all suddenly clicked. This was no longer just a glorified VFX showcase. This was the real deal to me. And so I've been eagerly awaiting this final chapter, or at least the tying up of the original story. Who knows if the supposed 4th and 5th films will ever materialize. This is proper record-breaking cinema. It's a fantasy spectacle with jaw-dropping visuals that is going to please most people. And it's just straight up worth the experience. This is what cinema was made for. This is what Netflix will never be able to compete with. It scratches at a universal itch. The thing about this new Avatar film, though, is it's considered a companion piece to the last film. It was filmed alongside Way of Water, and they originally shared the same script, I believe. It was just cut in half. But there is a problem here. James Cameron usually makes some kind of technological leap with each of his new releases. Kind of like what the video game developer Valve does. They don't release a new game unless they push the medium forward. And with James Cameron's films, you only have to look at films like The Abyss or Terminator 2 for the incredible advancements in CGI, which still hold up. Titanic for its brilliant blend of practical and CGI effects, and now of course the motion capture stuff in Avatar. There has been a 13-year gap between Avatar 1 and The Way of Water because they needed to develop the tech to achieve motion cap underwater. All this to say, there's no new revolution here. We are getting served more of the same. And I'm not complaining. It's downright impressive that a director's filmography pushes so many boundaries. I guess I was just a little concerned going into this that we were going to get a, well, copy and paste spectacle. What's new about this one other than the continuation of the story? And Fire and Ash is a good experience. I just can't call it anything more than a fine film. The visuals are breathtaking. It's something everyone comments on because they just hit you in the face. They get so close to your eyeballs. When you sit in that seat with the 3D glasses on, the level of immersion achieved is staggering. And you need to make sure you watch this in 3D IMAX, not real 3D, I should add. There is so many moments in this film that will make you gasp, that will just leave you in awe, just gazing at this unfathomable feat that they have achieved. There are a couple of new visual tricks. It felt like the camera work leaned more into 3D elements of the film as well this time around. Nothing that feels like a full-blown gimmick, I should add. But this film really is beautiful. The water is undeniable. The fire looks great, but also not used as much as I expected. The high frame rate felt less jarring here than it did in Way of Water. The switching between 24 frames and 48 frames is still applied in a choppy sense, cutting up the rhythm of the edit in often questionable ways. It doesn't bother me as much as it seems to other people. I actually quite like the HFR stuff. I think it's what justifies the 3D, and it does deepen your connection to the film. But the constant switching is a choice. When it comes to the story though, this is where my main problems start to emerge. I think it's the most poorly paced of the three films, and you get the most uncanny sense of déjà vu whilst watching certain sequences play out. This film relives a lot of moments from Way of Water, essentially with a reframing, because certain characters are further along in their arcs, but it doesn't feel like we end up anywhere new. Spider is the most interesting character in these films, and although he gets more screen time here, his character is handled like a plot device, getting passed around to ignite different motives so that we can have another fight scene. I found it a bit exhausting. To be honest, I found a lot of the characters' arcs in here to be either underwhelming or underdeveloped. Considering the amount of time we have spent with them, at times it felt like I hardly knew some of them. I still like a lot of the performances, especially Zoe Saldana as Neytiri. I think she adds a lot to this film in particular. Una Chaplin is great as Varang, the leader of the New Ash clan, but her character just ends up getting pushed to the side along with most other storylines. They don't make great use of her. And Sam Worthington's Jake Sully just does not carry the same weight for me in this film as the main protagonist. I think the main problem with this film is that I didn't feel like I was discovering anything new. The wonder and the magic is burnt out. The world building is much smaller here. These are things that made the tech of the film excel. So I'm left to focus on a series of plot lines that I honestly found frustrating and underwhelming. And the script is the biggest head scratch here. There are so many lines of dialogue that felt like placeholder lines that should not have been said as plainly as they were. There are so many moments here that are played so straight and sincere they come off as ridiculous and honestly derail the emotion of certain scenes. There is some really clunky exploratory phrasing that honestly just pulls me out of the film more than the high frame rate switches do. There was quite a lot of rustling towards the end of the third act in the auditorium I watched this. Kind of indicated how ready a lot of people were for this to end. The biggest criticism I'm sure we've all seen doing the rounds online is there's no quotable lines, there's no cultural impact. These films just come out quietly, collect their $1 billion, and the world moves on. I don't think that's completely the case, but this film proves some of their points to a degree. And so I'm left in this conflict. Wow, does it feel good to watch this film at the cinema? But I don't know if I'm going to be thinking about this film past tomorrow. Please go and watch the behind the scenes of these films though. It's really fascinating stuff. What they've been able to achieve is nothing short of monumental. I will always be first in line for a new James Cameron film. I'm just ready for something new. So please do let me know what you think of the film. Regardless of its story, it's an experience I still encourage anyone to go and have. It's a one-of-a-kind cinematic journey, so please go out and support the cinema. And do check out my video of why you should watch films at the cinema in the process. Consider subscribing to the channel, but all that's left to do now is to thank you very much for watching.